Now, at first, I really wasn't that interested in the Mike Sarno trial. I didn't know any of the defendants. I mean, I heard a large, and I was kind of spoiled with Family Secrets, Sam Carlisi, Black Gangster Disciple trial. But man, I'm glad I went to this trial. This turned out to be one of my favorites. Here's Mike, who was out on bond. He was able to come and go, and you could actually make small talk with him. If you're cast and roll for a mob guy, you definitely want to look at Mike. 300 pounds, looks like a mob boss. Here's an old mugshot of Mike, the large guy Sarno, a made member of the Chicago outfit. He was a street boss for the Rocky and Felice crew. He grew up under the tutelage of Bobby Salerno, was very close friends with the late Bobby Salerno and his late son Alex and the Salerno family. 1993, he got pinched on extortion, got out in 1999, only to get picked up again in 2004. Now, the government stated that when Jimmy and Michael Marcello went to prison in the Family Secrets trial, that Mike Sarno's crew took over the video gaming business. They had video poker machines in most of your bars, restaurants, small businesses, not only in the city of Chicago, but the surrounding suburbs. The government alleged that they were running a multi-million-dollar video poker machine business without paying taxes. Now, one of the main witnesses that testified against Mike Sarno, one of his competitors, was Vincent Dublino, the guy in the upper left. He was warned many times by large and largest crew to get his machines out of certain businesses. This guy would not listen. He would not back down. He even confronted Mike in the same neighborhood that they lived in, and he told him, "F you, fat ass." Shortly after that, his business was bombed. Now, one of the main defendants at this trial was Mark Polkman, a high-ranking outlaw motorcycle gang member. He owned and operated a front called Goldberg Jewelers in Cicero, Illinois, right there in Roosevelt and Cicero. He was also part of the bombing that took place in Berwyn, and he was the leader of the burglary crew, a high-sophisticated burglary crew that was doing scores throughout the Midwest. Now, a dozen or so witnesses in the prosecution stated that Mark Polkman was one of the best safe crackers in the country. There pretty much wasn't a safe that this guy could not peel. And in a lot of their burglaries and scores that they did, Mark Polkman was the one that was able to crack the safe. He was also peeled safes for other criminals and other outfit members throughout his career. Now, the government talked a lot about Mark Goldman's headquarters, Goldberg Jewelers in Cicero, Illinois, right there in Roosevelt and Cicero. This was a front. This is where they would fleece all the stolen merchandise from the burglary crew. There was a currency next door, and at one point, they blew a hole right through the wall and stole over $200,000 from the currency. Now, out of all the defendants, aside from the Polish guy, I didn't think they had a lot on Mike. However, the prosecution showed how nervous, how paranoid this guy was. When the female FBI agent testified, she said when she was tailing him, he'd go real slow. Then he'd go real fast. Then he'd pull over, getting very agitated. They showed video of him walking to Goldberg Jewelers with a newspaper from the bombing, and he had Mark Polkman shredded. Now, a very interesting thing about this trial was for the first time they showed the Chicago outfit's close association with the outlaw motorcycle gang. They would actually do scores together and do work for one another. At one point, Mark Polkman and another high-ranking, intimidating outlaw motorcycle gang went into Vincent Dublino's business and smashed it up biker style, trying to intimidate him. Now, after numerous threats and several warnings, in 2013, allegedly large Mark Polkman and the crew, they blew up Dublino's video poker machine business in the town of Berwyn. And not only did they show photos to the jury, but the prosecution even brought in charred wood and damaged items left over from the aftermath of the bombing. Now here's ATF undercover agent Lou. I seen him testify against Mark Polkman. He actually became friends with Mark Polkman, gained his trust. They had some common hobbies together. Mark Polkman was very paranoid and suspicious and just didn't make friends with anybody. However, Lou was able to penetrate the gang and eventually indict him. Now, here's one of the government's main witnesses in this case, Mark Hay, part of the burglary crew. He got pinched earlier. Rather than cooperate, he decided to flip. He wore a wire on Sam, bragging about the tape that Sam made. He also got caught doing a home burglary where the older couple came home. The old man got in a fight with this guy. Mark testified that he stabbed the man in the leg in order to break free. Everybody in the courtroom was upset. Now, this guy, the Master Blaster, Sam Volpendenzo, is a World War II veteran. He came out every day in the orange prison jumpsuit and a wheelchair. He didn't even care to dress up in court like most defendants do. They got him on tape bragging about the bomb that he made. He said that he put 2 wicks in there because if the first wick is a dud, you're damn sure the second wick is going to ignite. He also was telling stories about Tony Accardo and Mad Sam DeStefano. Now, sometimes it gets intense in these courtrooms, especially when mob guys are on tape talking shit about other mob guys. The Master Blaster, Sam, he was on tape telling stories about Tony Accardo and Mad Sam DeStefano, which you really don't hear a lot about. He was also talking shit about Large and his crew, saying he did a lot of jobs. They weren't paying him. He was supposed to be part of the Northside crew because they knew he was no beefer. Now, here's another defendant who was in custody, Anthony Volpendenzo. He's actually Sam's son, a career somewhat of a master burglar. His MO was smash and grab scores, not only in Chicago, but throughout the entire Midwest. And I remember during breaks in the courtroom, this guy would actually sing Christmas carols throughout the courtroom for everybody to enjoy. Now, Anthony was a championship BMX rider, and he would use his bikes on some of his smash and grab scores. After careful planning, casing of jewelry stores, he would park his bike, go in there, tie everybody up, threaten everybody with violence, smash everything up, take all the jewels, and get away on his bike. One lady testified she'd never seen anybody ride a bike like that. Now, this was a high sophisticated burglary crew that was doing home invasions, robbing small businesses, smash and grab jewelry stores throughout the Midwest. After careful planning and casing of stores, they would go in there, tie everybody up, threaten them with violence, never use violence, smash everything up, take all the valuables and leave. They did over 300 scores. Here's one of the defendants at this trial. Not quite sure why he was charged. He came to court every day dressed in black. He would get around with a cane. He was out on bond. Actually became friends with him after the trial when he came home. He would drive around in a brand new Hummer, service the machines, collect money in the machines. And when the bar restaurant owners were asked, did this man ever threaten you with violence? Every one of them said no. He was a pure gentleman. Here's a fairly new prosecutor, an Arab guy named Amar Bachit. He prosecuted Mike Sarno, Mark Polkman, Anthony Volpendenzo, and the rest of the defendants. They had a very strong case. Some of the witnesses were a little questionable, in my opinion, but they were able to corroborate everything and eventually found all the defendants guilty as charged. This man also prosecuted Frankie Schweiss. Now, Mike Sarno decided to go with an experienced top defense attorney, Terrence Giuseppe, to represent him at this case. This guy is a legend in the criminal world, top defensive mob lawyer, if you will. He tried to raise reasonable doubt, tried to separate Mike Sarno connection with the rest of the defendants, but overall was unsuccessful, and he lost the case. Now, Damian Cheros, seen here representing that lowlife Harry Weinstein, he represented Mark Polkman at this trial. And as I stated earlier, all the evidence, most of the evidence was against Mark Polkman. Sometimes Damian We'll ask court buffs what their opinion is, what our insight is. He's curious to get our observation. And one time I told him, it seems like the prosecutors are sharper lawyers. He said, no, we're all good lawyers, but they have all the evidence. Now, early on, the judge was very kind to Mike Sarno. He allowed him out on bond, which is unheard of for a guy like Mike Sarno. He also allowed Mike and his family to go to Joe's Steak and Seafood restaurant downtown Chicago for a wonderful holiday dinner. However, at the end, when he was found guilty, the prosecution wanted his bond revoked, and the judge agreed, and they took him into custody immediately. Two of the defendants in this trial were police officers, one from Berwyn, one from Cicero. I've seen the Berwyn cop testify how he would case places and give tips to the burglary crew on potential scores. They also provided surveillance for Mike Sarno and Mark Polkman. The Berwyn cop testified a couple times a year. He drove hundreds of thousands of dollars down to Florida. That was profits from their burglary crew. Now, two of the FBI agents that were assigned to this case were two beautiful blonde female agents, and they testified on their surveillance of Mike Sarno when he was driving. They testified on their surveillance of Mark Polkman. They also planted cameras and microphones in and around Goldberg Jewelers, one specifically on a telephone pole in the alley. There's federal judge Ron Guzman. As I stated earlier, he was very lenient and kind to Mike in the beginning of the trial and during the trial, but at the end, he came down pretty hard on Mike. He sentenced him to 30 years in prison. Mark Polchman got 60, which was later reduced to 20. The Polish guy got a few years. Anthony Sr., who made the bomb, got 30 years, and his son got about 15 years, all found guilty. Mike Sarno's family and friends supported him during his trial. They were in court every day. But when the verdicts were read, I don't think they were surprised, but they were definitely disappointed. But his daughter and wife were very upset when the judge revoked his bond and took him into custody. They yelled out loud, "What a great Christmas this is going to be." Mike Sarno attempted to read a note, and he actually broke down, started crying, and his lawyer had to read it for him.